Talk about one of history's greatest ironies, right? How does a tiny, persecuted faith, born on the absolute fringes of the Roman Empire, end up completely taking over the very superpower that tried to crush it? Let's unpack this incredible story. I mean, really think about that question. How does that even happen? Well, the answer isn't simple, that's for sure. It's this messy, totally fascinating story of faith, power, rebellion, and some unbelievable twists. Let's get into it.
Okay, so to really get just how revolutionary Christianity was, we first have to step into the world it was born into. What did religion and faith actually look like for your average person in the Roman Empire?
Well, Rome's official religion was polytheistic. They worshipped a whole crew of gods like Jupiter and Mars, who you'll probably recognize from the Greek pantheon. But here's the thing you have to understand. For most Romans, this was less about some deep personal faith and way more about public duty. It was kind of like a cosmic deal. You perform the right rituals for the gods, and in return, the gods keep Rome safe and prosperous.
And this is a really crucial point. Doing these rituals made you a good Roman citizen, sure, but for a lot of people, it didn't really feed the soul. It was a religion of the state, not of the heart. And that created this kind of spiritual vacuum, this empty space just waiting for a new message, something much more personal.
Now, you gotta give it to them. Rome was pretty pragmatic when it came to religion. The empire was massive, filled with all kinds of local beliefs. So their policy was basically, hey, worship whoever you want, as long as you also pay your respects to the Roman gods. This wasn't about belief, you see. It was a simple, non-negotiable loyalty test. It was about proving you were loyal to Rome. And it's exactly this loyalty test that set the stage for a massive, empire-shaking conflict when a totally new kind of faith popped up in the Roman province of Judea. So, when Rome conquered Judea way back in 63 BCE, they ran into a belief system that was just fundamentally different. Monotheism, the belief in one single god. For many Jews, being told to honor Roman gods wasn't just a political thing, it was a deep betrayal of their one and only God. So, right from the get-go, you've got serious friction. And into this really tense world comes a Jewish preacher named Jesus of Nazareth. And his message was, for the time, absolutely radical. He doubled down on the idea of a single God, but taught this message of universal love, of mercy, of forgiveness. He promised eternal life in heaven, and his message that everyone was equal in the eyes of God, wow, that was incredibly powerful, especially for the poor and the outcasts who had zero hope in the rigid Roman world.
So you might be wondering, why was this message of peace and love seen as such a massive threat? Well, because it struck at the very heart of Roman power and authority.
And this is where these two worldviews just smash into each other. For Rome, loyalty was simple. You served the state and the emperor, who was often seen as a god himself. But for a Christian, your ultimate loyalty was to a higher power, to God alone. You couldn't serve two masters. And in the eyes of Rome, choosing God over the emperor, well, that wasn't a religious choice. That was treason.
So you can just picture it, right? On one side, you have the absolute power of the Roman emperor. And on the other, you have this new faith whose followers would literally die before they'd worship him. To Rome, this wasn't about religion. This was a political rebellion, plain and simple. The Roman authorities, they started getting nervous. They were afraid Jesus might spark a full-blown revolt. So they arrested him. He was accused of blasphemy by some Jewish leaders, and for the Romans, of defying their authority. Around 29 CE, he was executed by crucifixion, a brutal public punishment they saved for enemies of the state. But here's the thing, Rome's solution, it created a much, much bigger problem. They thought they put out a small fire, but in executing Jesus, they accidentally lit a torch that would blaze across the entire empire. And this is where Rome made an absolutely epic miscalculation. By executing Christians for their faith, they didn't create criminals, they created martyrs. The incredible courage of these people facing death became the faith's most powerful recruiting tool. Persecution didn't stamp out Christianity. It was like gasoline on a fire. After Jesus' death, his apostles, a guy named Paul in particular, traveled non-stop, and the message spread like you wouldn't believe. By the year 100, just a few decades later, you had these small but passionate Christian communities popping up in major cities all over the eastern half of the empire. Now, let's fast forward another 200 years, to the year 300. And this map, I mean, wow, it tells a staggering story. The faith has absolutely exploded. It followed the trade routes into every single corner of the Roman world, from modern-day France and Spain all the way to North Africa. What started as a tiny movement in Judea was now an empire-wide phenomenon.
And this brings us to the ultimate irony in this whole story. The very empire trying to crush Christianity accidentally gave it the perfect toolkit to spread. The Pax Romana, that long period of Roman peace, meant people could travel safely. Their incredible network of stone roads, they were basically superhighways for missionaries. Ideas traveled with goods along trade routes, and because everyone spoke either Latin or Greek, the message could be understood almost anywhere. Rome literally built the network that would eventually be used to convert it. You can't make this stuff up. So all this unstoppable growth, it's setting the stage for one of the most dramatic plot twists in all of human history. The faith that Rome had tried so hard to destroy was now on the verge of taking over completely.
The big turning point comes down to one man, Emperor Constantine. Now, Constantine was a smart guy, a brilliant general, and he wasn't blind. He looked around his empire in the early 300s and saw the writing on the wall. Christianity wasn't some fringe cult anymore. It was a powerful, organized, and rapidly growing force. He realized fighting it was a losing battle.
The year is 312 CE. Constantine is in the middle of a civil war, fighting for control of the empire. And on the night before a huge, decisive battle, he supposedly has a vision that wouldn't just win him the battle, but would change the course of Western civilization forever.
After his victory, Constantine issues something called the Edict of Milan. And with that, everything changed. It officially ended all persecution and granted Christians total freedom to worship. After 3 long centuries of being an outlawed underground faith, Christianity was finally legal.
I mean, this whole journey is just astonishing when you lay it out like this. It all starts with Rome conquering Judea. Then, the founder of the faith is executed as an enemy of the state. 300 years later, it's legalized by Constantine. And then, get this, less than a century after that, Emperor Theodosius makes Christianity the official state religion. The faith Rome tried to destroy was now the official faith of Rome. The transformation was absolute. And that, of course, brings us to one of history's biggest and most fascinating debates. Did the rise of Christianity actually contribute to the fall of the Western Roman Empire? Some historians argue that its focus on the afterlife and a heavenly kingdom made Romans less concerned with the very worldly problems of, defending their borders from invasion. Did a faith that conquered an empire from within also weaken it to the point of collapse? Now that is a question worth thinking about.